Oh, y'all.
Hi, Dr. Freeman.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's
I
Aaron
can't hear
Oxford.
anybody.
Can you hear me now?
When do you guys speak?
Yeah. Can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, nothing's coming through. Crap.
Oh no.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Why am I not hearing you? Let's see here.
How about now?
Okay, can you guys talk one more time?
Yep. Can you hear us now? No,
Nothing
nothing
coming
still.
through there. I've got three different options here. I'm trying. I hear people.
All right, great.
Okay.
Okay.
How are
I'm
you doing
sorry
today,
about
sir?
that, you guys. I had another meeting that ran long, and I was like, crap, I'm going to be late.
You're a-okay. We were just talking amongst ourselves about the time constraints we have a little bit today too, so we're kind of going to make this brief anyway.
No worries.
Um, so I appreciate you joining with us. My name's Aaron Oxford. This is Ian and Caleb, and we're all part of a team of students that are going to go through a mock grant proposal looking for funding for your department. Um, we have a few questions just kind of to go through some of the ideas you would have for what you would do with funding and things of that nature. So if you don't mind, we'll kind of kick it off and just kind of round robin, take some turns asking a few questions.
No worries. Ask away.
Okay. So I'm just going to start out with what are the primary responsibilities for the Office of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, if you had to sum that up in like a mission statement?
So basically, we oversee everything that's revolved around so the enrollment side is basically like from admittance to graduation. So anything that they've got to do to enroll in classes every semester. So oversee a lot of those services and offices and departments. Student affairs and enrollment management and auxiliary services are the three major arms within student affairs. And we have probably around 26 to 30 departments or whatever. So it's around I don't know, 200 and some staff members or whatever. So there's a lot of moving parts and people and things. And so we manage a lot of the stuff that happens on campus that's not in the classroom for the most part. So that would be it. So we do all the serious stuff like counseling, conduct, health services, those kinds of things, plus all of like the fun student engagement-y activities, kinds of things that happen on campus. So that's kind of like the student affairs arm of it. And then, like you said, the more serious nature of like enrollments, which revolves around budgets and recruitment activities and marketing and all of those different pieces that we would drive from that kind of side of things. So
Okay. So if you had to sum that up in like just like a one kind of a goal for the whole department, is that easy to do or pretty difficult?
yeah, it's so difficult because they all have different things. So like one
Sure.
side, the enrollment side is to grow enrollment. That's
Yeah.
it. Like, you based on like what's the credit hour production, because that's the business side of the institution. But then student affairs itself is usually about like student connection, engagement, and involvement. So that would be the other arm, and they don't care about enrollment stuff. So they're just like, we're just here to do cool things and make sure everybody's successful. So it's very kind of like a dichotomous kind of like aspect of it. Um, but at the same time, they all blend really well with one another in that sense. So, because it's overall the big structure of like what we do.
Right. So would you say then for your target population who you serve, it's not just current NSU students, but it's also prospective NSU students? So
Yes.
a larger target than maybe some other departments.
Yeah, for the most part, almost all of our people focus in on the current student population. That's really the engagement side. The only people that focus on prospective students would be like our admissions office and that kind of thing. We have a few grants that do that as well, but for the most part, it's all about current students.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so you kind of already covered a lot of the key services you offer. How long have you guys had this department to offer those services? Do you know?
Since the beginning of time. No, so I mean, um, like I have been here for 15 years.
Mhm.
And when I first got here, um, student affairs, like I don't know, probably like 5 years before I had got here, student affairs was like three people. And then we took over all the enrollment functions. Then we took over all of the auxiliary services functions. And plus, we've grown a lot of different student support services pieces. And so it itself has grown significantly, but it's also because of people's expertises. Like, I've worked at 8 different institutions across the United States, and I oversee all the auxiliary services at a bunch of other schools. And so when I came here, people were like, "Oh, you're an expert at that. Like, why don't you fix these things?" And so that's kind of how some of that stuff happens, where they're like, "Oh, we need you to, mend whatever problems that might exist," just because of really what I would consider skill set areas that I had, and then we brought in staff who could then fix all the other problems as we kind of have went along. I feel like more than anything, like as I've added departments over the time frame,
Hmm.
it's been because of trying to fix problems that other people have had. Like they couldn't manage the budget, or they weren't doing a good job like serving students, whatever that might look like.
Sure. So you said about 5 years ago, or maybe a little longer, it was only like three people. Do you know like how big the department's grown currently?
Well, that was like 20 years ago, was the
Okay,
5 years before I got here, and I've been here for 15 years. So
I see. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Um, well, then I'm gonna cap off my questions real quick with so what are the biggest challenges that you're looking to address in your department right now?
Oftentimes it's really just where we're having like funding issues. So I think if unless you live under a rock, you don't know that the federal government hasn't had a significant impact on higher education, and so we've lost around $7 million of grant funding in the last year because of some of the changes in from the federal side. So there's a lot of holes there that we're trying to fill because usually what you do is when you're seeking grants, you're trying to basically do a service that you just don't have the capacity to do in your traditional budget, trying to make sure that you're keeping the cost down for students. And so that's really where we try to focus in a lot of our energy on that. So like there are things that we know our students need, like food insecurity stuff or food housing issues or those kinds of things. And at the end of the day, like it's not like you structure a budget that can supply all of these different needs for students. Like
Right.
nobody wants to pay for that, from a budgeting perspective, because it's really kind of like a personal problem or issue that person's working on. But for them to be successful and for us to be successful, they need to be able to manage housing and food and all those things. So usually we're seeking funding for stuff like that no other place are you going to be able to get budgets. So
Okay. Would you say then that out of the biggest holes you have or the biggest needs, is there one that takes a priority, like a specific department or specific issue one of the departments addresses?
yeah, so like I'll just give you a list right now. I've got a number of things that I are big pieces for us. Like first generation students, we just rolled out a program with First Gen Forward where we're trying to address like first generation student needs and that kind of thing. So we're always looking for financial support that would help serve those students. Financial literacy is a big thing right now. The federal government talks a lot about the debt that students have. A lot of times students are making decisions on money and things that they don't necessarily have the knowledge to make. And so we need to do a better job of educating folks on like, hey, if you're taking loans out and all these things, what does that look like? How do you not default? Like, what are some of the avenues you can take to pay those things back and that kind of thing so that your future is not harmed by the decisions you're making from a financial perspective. So we're always looking for money there because, again, no one wants to fund that kind of department, but we know it's a big need for our students. Like I have another one on the list, like our ballroom on the NSU's campus. I think I know a couple of you guys' faces. But if you've been to the ballroom, it's just kind of a crappy old room. It serves its purpose, but it would be nice if it looked cooler, you know. But no one
Right.
wants to give me money for that, so I'm trying to find money to help renovate that ballroom so that it's a more, I guess, grand space when we have events that are special in there and that kind of thing. And so that's on my list. We've had a lot of concerns around like note taking. A lot of students really struggle with like how to take notes and kind of manage that experience. And our Center for Disability Services always said like, yeah, certain students need that kind of assistance in the classroom, but wouldn't it be cool if we had some sort of program that helped them pull in the speaking notes from like when they go to class and it helps them, like basically take all those that whatever that lecture was by the faculty and put it into some sort of note format so they could more easily study and all those things. And so like that's something that she's requested, but I don't have the budget to do that. So it's like, well, maybe we can get a grant to pay for stuff like that. We've also talked about like doing leadership certificates for like students and for faculty. And we do that in different ways, but it would be cool if we could have more financial support to be able to do some of that stuff. And so those are probably the biggest ones that really popped up for us. Like right now, we're also doing a major grant for workforce initiatives, which is really connecting with businesses and helping train and educate their staff at an institute or at their organization or their business.
Right.
And then we're also writing another grant currently for um, why am I blanking? But anyhow, you get the gist.
We do. Um, I think we actually need to narrow down into like maybe one of those projects for us to focus on for the purpose of this. Would it
Yep.
be okay if we did? I know you were talking about the financial literacy. I mean, that sounded very applicable to my life for sure. Um, would that be kind of a top priority, do you think?
I mean, I have a lot of top priorities, but it's a great one if that's one you want to focus on. I think it's great.
Okay, it'll help us with some of the future questions we have.
Yeah.
Um, Caleb, did you want to go ahead and take over for that next section of questions?
Sure. Um, so, who would you say would be the primary beneficiary of this program of the financial literacy? The students, of course. And how do you think that could affect them?
Yeah, so the predominant offices that deal with folks about finances are the bursar and financial aid. They're the two departments on campus that really spend the bulk of the time kind of like trying to help students understand. And so they always say that if you want to piss someone off, talk about their money, and so, it's just it's always a tensious conversation, a tension-filled conversation around anything to do with money because like oftentimes the federal government will audit the information that student has supplied to financial aid. And so when we ask the students for more information because the federal government has asked for it, they think, oh, you financial aid office, you're being so mean to me. Why are you asking all these mean questions? And it's like, we didn't even ask you, like someone else asked us to ask you kind of thing. And so I think sometimes it's really hard for people to understand like how do things function and how do things operate. And so it's just those are the offices that spend the bulk of time like trying to educate people around the financial matters. We manage a lot of like payment plans for students who can't pay the bills. And so there's rules like, let's see here, about 12 years ago, if you had $1 of outstanding debt, you couldn't enroll for the next semester. Well, how many students have an outstanding bill? Like most of them. Most
You're
of them
right.
have some amount. And so we ended up moving it to, I think, $300 at one juncture. And so it's like, oh, we did so good. And then we would look at data that showed how many students couldn't enroll because they had this small amount of debt. And then we moved it to $500, and then it went to 800, and now it's at 1,000. And so, those are kinds of things that we try to work hard to help students navigate those things. But no matter what, there's always going to be someone who just can't, navigate whatever life situation that they've got going on. And so, we're constantly trying to make sure they're aware of all those different services that, whether it's scholarships or like how do you manage a credit card, or, we see this happen a lot where students, when you sign a contract for an apartment, I mean, I don't know if you guys live on or off campus. I think you both live off, if I remember right. But, most of the time you sign a lease for wherever you live for a year. And so the same thing happens like if they sign a lease to live on campus for a year. Some of them will be like, I don't want to live on campus anymore. And then they just go sign a lease somewhere else. Well, now you've got two leases you can't get out of.
Right.
And so it's just trying to help people understand like you can't just do whatever the hell you want to. There's always a financial impact on that. And so that's really hard when, maybe they've come from a family where their parents have taken care of all the things. They've never had to manage bills before, and all those things. And so it's really figuring out like what kind of services would students want to utilize and do to be able to help navigate the decisions that they've never made before, and still be successful.
So it'd be fair to say that without this program, say it was never addressed, like it'd be continued frustration for the students and confusion, as well, not just with like FAFSA and Versar and financial aid, but you were saying like with real life experiences such as the double
Right.
leases. Um, so what I guess we'll move on to the next section. It's totally unrelated, but have you received grants for this already? And if yes,
Yeah, I don't think we have received any money for grants before. So let's see here. I'll explain a couple things too about kind of like default rates. So like let's say you get loans from the university and you decide school's not the thing for me, but you also now don't have any money and so you can't pay back your loans or whatever. And so as soon as you leave school, you start your clock for paying back your loans. And a lot of times students aren't aware of that. They're just like, well, I have forever, right? What does it matter if I have people asking for money from me? Well, at some point they're going to garnish your paycheck, or at some point they're going to, do a lot of different things to try to obtain those funds from you. And so it's really helping try to figure that help people understand like the impact of having loans that you're not going to be able to pay back. And so, as an institution, the reason why that becomes even more important for us is that if your default rate gets over 20% or 25%, I can't remember the exact number, you will lose your ability to give all financial aid to all students. And so, if you allowed your financial aid default rate to get too high and they took away your ability to give aid, knowing what NSU, who the NSU serves, there would be a whole lot of people who would not be able to come to school. And so, again, it's also trying to make sure that you don't ruin the chances for other people to help manage Title IV funds that come through financial aid. So, it's a big deal that we do some of these education things. But again, no one cares. Nobody wants to put budget into doing those things if you don't have to.
it's not
Um,
seen as a priority,
Right. But it is if it goes bad, right? So,
right?
so that's kind of where it's a hard thing to balance between like what people think. So we actually went and we got put on suspension. I think it was about 12 years ago. When maybe it was about 15 years ago now that I say that, because it was right when I was coming in and I wasn't the person responsible for it, but I got to watch it unfold. And so they put all these different programs in place. And that's actually at that time we hired a company that started, well, actually, we didn't hire them. They were free. The state had hired this company and we were able to use them. And that company helped call every person that left the institution and tried to help them not default on their loans. And so we got our rate to about down to 10%. And then at that juncture, the institution was like, we don't care. And so all the money was pulled from every financial literacy program that we were doing because they were like, our rate's fine. Let's not
Yeah,
worry about it.
it's no longer a problem anymore.
Right. And so now as it slowly kind of like creeps up again, at some juncture, someone's going to have to pay attention and go, oh, wait, maybe we do need to spend money on that. So,
Yeah, it's just if it doesn't stay, the problem recurs.
right.
Um, so would you say that most of the school's funding comes from grants, or what is it? What would you say the majority of funds come from for the school?
Yeah. So funding really comes from three different places. So you have financial aid, and financial aid and loans, which is all through the FAFSA. And the bulk of that is from like loans, federal government, how they operated, kind of like the financial aid system. I don't know the percentage of that. It's large, but it is a large amount. And then you also have scholarshiping, which comes from like basically from the institution. It's I don't
I think
even
he's
know. I'm
actually
trying to,
talking, I apologize, more of the funding for the school's purposes for funding the project that you would look
oh,
for, like
like
additional staffing for this resource.
oh, you're talking about like where we fund financial literacy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. All of it's from the institution, and we really don't have any money there currently. I think we spend we spend a very small amount on that company that helps reach out to people for default prevention. because we stopped doing it when the state lost it, and then our rates started to skyrocket again, and so we ended up having to do it again. So, and I paid for that from I moved money around in my budgets to cover that because if not, it was going to get bad.
Most of the money for your budget, then that just comes from tuition expenses people are paying in.
Yeah, and money from the state, which is like not very much, but it's a portion of it.
Is there any ever private funding for people doing donations or anything like that?
No, because it's not sexy. Nobody wants to pay for
Right.
that kind of stuff.
And okay, if you were to have this program, who would be the one managing the finance and the budgeting of it?
It would be between probably financial aid and the bursar office. I mean, the predominant would
Okay,
probably be financial aid just because they're more built that way. Bursar fit folks usually are, you need to pay your bill. I don't really care about your problems. I'm not saying that's really how they are, but they're much more like, I need you to pay your bill.
right,
Financial aid people are more like, hey, we're here to help you manage your finances, and manage the financial aid federal process because it's really confusing. It's kind of messy, and so when I first got here, that office was not very friendly. And so I basically had to beat them into submission to be like, you're not the Gestapo here. Like, you're meant to
right.
help them navigate federal aid, period. Like, that's your job is to help them, like, not to tell them all the crappy things they can't do, you know? So,
Find a solution for
yes.
Hmm.
them. Okay, I'll let Ian ask some
Yeah.
questions now too.
All right. So I think what I'm wondering is like, if you got this grant, what would like success look like for you? Like, where, what would you have to hit for you to view the project as successful?
So, every year we get a list of people who um, can't enroll for the next semester because they have outstanding bills. And so
Hmm.
I guess success to me would be reducing that number, whatever that might look like. So if you're trying to find a way to mitigate the amount of people who cannot cover their bill for whatever reason, because it's, there's always a litany of things of like what happened to them and like, and sometimes no matter what you do, you can't help them with whatever problem surfaced. Like if you have a death in the family or someone loses their job in your family or whatever it might be. There's always some story. Life is never easy for anyone. And so I think in general, it's figuring out like, how do we help people, one, utilize the resources that are out there? A lot of times people default on loans just because they don't understand what they got themselves into or how to manage that. Because there's a lot of times, like let's say, you do have a death in the family, there's ways to like contact them and to defer your loans for a certain period of time because of some situation that happened. But a lot of times they don't know that or they're in stress in that moment. And so they just say, well, screw it. I'm just not going to worry about it. Well, they're going to
Hmm.
find you at some
Yeah.
point. And so what we're trying to do is help them understand that there's a lot of different ways of navigating this and or seeking out their own support. We have in the last few years, the state has set aside some critical occupation funds. And so a student that's in one of those critical occupations that has an outstanding bill, we may come in and pay their whole bill off for them so they can start school anew, basically scot-free. And when we've called a few students in the past and said, "Hey, we'd be willing to pay your bill off," they think it's a scam. They're just like,
Yeah. Because
"Come on
they're
now."
like, no, you're not. Yeah.
Right. There's no way that could ever really happen. But,
Yeah.
so there's a component of that it's really just trying to figure out like helping them see that there's other resources out
Mhm.
there than just them trying to dig out of their own problem on their own.
Right. Like making it
Um,
like a visible thing that everyone knows that this is an option, not like, oh, if you dig
right.
for it, it's a possibility in there, but it's like everyone knows about that. Yeah. That makes sense.
And I do feel like financial aid and the bursar, like I said, are sometimes seen as like the devil. A lot of people are like, oh, all they do is want my money, and so nobody wants to
Hmm.
call an office that they perceive like that and say, hey, can you help me? Because they think all they're going to get is we just need you to pay your bill. We don't care about your problems. But we do care about their problems. And so what we want to be able to figure out is like, how do we help create a system and a process where students can go, I just need some help. you know.
Mhm.
And we have offices like that on campus, but sometimes students don't realize that. So I think it's a part of it would just be like educational marketing, just be like, hey, call us if you have
Mhm.
financial problems, like, and we'll help you navigate through that. And it doesn't even have to be that financial aid or bursar office. And so I think that's a part of it for me is like just helping people understand that there's all of these resources that can help them. And then finding other ways of like maybe that's like emergency grant funds that people could tap into, like if they're in some sort of like, like let's say their house burnt down or somebody stole their car or, something weird where, it's something that's completely out of that person's control.
Right. Sure. What kind of resources do you think this sort of like project would need other than just the money itself? Like, would you want to put other offices in places maybe like more visible to people? Like, or like you said, like the marketing, would there need to be like specific resources put to make sure everyone knows that this is going on or what?
Yeah, like we are creating this year a retention office. Well, it's called the Student Center or
Hmm.
Student Success Center is what it's called. And it would be cool to have a staff member in that office that's all they dealt with was people's financial situations.
Hmm.
Like that they were separate from those other entities, that people didn't feel quite as like, oh, as soon as I talk to them, they're going to just badger me about my bill. Like that they call
Yeah.
and just know they're just here to help me, period.
Yeah.
And they don't have any other need besides trying to help me navigate my problems. Like I think something like that would be pretty cool. And then the marketing to get people to know that that exists,
Mhm.
that they can call them, email them, whatever it might be, that kind of thing. I think that
Yeah.
could be a neat resource.
Cool. Um,
Um, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you know my time has been cut short, and I'll let Aaron and Ian finish this up.
No
Thank
worries.
you
Thank you,
for meeting.
Caleb.
yeah. Thanks for coming, Caleb.
So Dr. Freeman, I had an additional question to kind of add on to Ian's end. So I'm an accountant, and so Dr. Seckert would probably really appreciate some of these questions I have about the funding specifically. You were mentioning like a staff member that would maybe just be hired to address those questions. You mentioned marketing, or just having like a slush fund kind of thing just to be able to help people in need. Do you have any kind of budget uh, ideas for what that would take? Like what the salary for that person would be? What the marketing campaign would cost?
Yeah, I mean, I could just like guess. I mean, for the most part, most of our entry level like coordinator positions usually make around 35,000 plus benefits, which usually revolves around probably like 60,000 to 65,000. So there's an element there where I think, that's probably the lowest grade you could probably pull off and make it work. And then, then they would have to get to the people who could, get them to financial aid and get them to the bursar office who have that expertise that they may not have. Because what I would really like is just someone who cares and wants to help
Mhm.
people. I think that's probably the biggest piece. And then when you think about emergency funding, like, oftentimes, let's say someone be like, "Oh, let's have $10,000." Well, $10,000 only makes it to like help two people or whatever. So it becomes pretty hard from that vantage point. So I do think if you had like a budget of around, couple 100,000, like that would be probably a great start to actually start to really help some people
Mhm.
who are truly in need. Now, it doesn't mean 20,000 wouldn't be great. I mean, we'd take it if somebody was going to give it to us. It's just that, if you really are wanting to start making an impact, that's really where your
Mhm.
amount would have to start at, probably.
Right. So like $20,000 isn't going to start a program. It's just going to kind of maybe be like a little fund for two or three people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right, I got a message. I think Zoom is probably going to kick us off here in a little bit, so I just want to make sure I address it before that happens too. If it's all right, we'll probably have a group discussion like over this weekend to reach out to you early next week to set up another meeting down the line in like 2 or 3 weeks from now to go over maybe some additional questions we have or kind of what we've come up with to that point.
Yeah.
And if it's okay, would it be okay to email you questions to get answers, or would you prefer to set up another Zoom meeting for those things?
Email is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ian, did you have any additional questions you wanted to ask before we get kicked
Hey,
off?
well, those were definitely my main things.
Okay. I think uh, yeah, the only thing that I see here is that it asks for us to ask you about potential challenges or barriers, but I think that's just going to run into, like you said, the sexiness
Mhm.
of what we're asking for versus who's going to want to actually fund a program like that. Um, as far as that type of project, if you envision like a start and finish date, I'm assuming that's going to be start as soon as possible and never finish.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
Mhm.
that's obviously the hardest part. Like when we do get resources like that,
Right,
that you have that set in place for a little bit of period of time, and then if it goes away, oftentimes it just stops. Like,
right,
it's not like you can go. So it is difficult. I mean, oftentimes we know it's just we're just trying to find a band-aid until we can find, solid forever resources, but those are few far and in between. So you just basically run from one chaos or fire to the next.
right. Okay. Well, I think that was all of our list of questions that we had
Great.
suggested to us and all the ones I came up with additionally. Ian, did you have anything else?
I think I'm good, but yeah,
All right. Well, Dr. Freeman, thank you so much for your time.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you guys very much, and good luck with your project.
All
yeah.
right.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later.
All right,
Yeah.
bye.
See you.